Good afternoon. My name is Jose Roberto Alarcon. I'm a native of Chile, but I live here in the United States of America, in the city of Salt Lake City, in the state of Utah. And today I have the pleasure to talk and to have a little chat here with my friend. He's a great friend of mine. He's a great teacher. He's an author, and just a great guy. His name is Whit Wirsing, and I would like him to introduce yourself to our audience, to our English audience today.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about how do you get your name? Because I'm interested, because not too many people are called or are named Whit. Hmm?
No.
Okay? Okay,
But everywhere
Mr. Whit
I've lived,
Wirsing.
I've always known a few. When I lived
You
in
have known a few.
California, I knew a few Whits, and back in my hometown of Roanoke, Virginia, I knew a few. So it's not very common, but it's not unknown either. But it's a family name. When I first came out here, almost half a century ago, I went to the genealogy library and looked up my family and discovered that there was a Charles Whitwell Cox who either died in 1810 or was born in 1810. But then at that time I realized that this name has been in the family for a couple of centuries.
That's great. Yes. Whit, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I've known you for a number of years now,
Yeah.
and I always thought this gentleman here really deserves more recognition, you know. So that's one of the reasons why we're here today. I want you to get to know him. He's a great teacher. He's a teacher of the English language. And he has written a wonderful book that I'm going to show you now. It's called the Ultimate Spanish Phrase Finder. How did this book came about, Whit?
Well, I think all of my professional life I looked for a good dictionary, a good phrase dictionary, because there are plenty of word dictionaries. And I never could find one. Every time I'd go into a bookstore, I'd look for one. So I just decided that I would write it. Since I couldn't find it, I'd do it myself.
What an easy job, huh?
And well, yeah, it was when I first started doing it, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I started collecting the phrases for it the year that I lived in Mexico City, 1981-82. And I went to UNAM that year. I studied at the National University in Mexico City. And I started notebooks. But then when I moved to Spain in 1998, to Valladolid, I opened the file of this book on February the 4th of 1998. And the first thing I did was put the Mexico City notebooks on the computer. But they only filled about 60 pages, and yeah.
Okay. I notice here that there's a lot of people involved in this project.
Mm-hmm.
You work with people from Spain, from Argentina,
Yeah.
from Ecuador, from a lot of different places.
Yeah.
And why did that happen?
Well, first of all, Spanish is a second language for me. I started young enough, and I had Latin before I started Spanish. And I liked Latin. And when I started taking Spanish, I was 14, almost 15 though. I thought, good grief, I've already been taking this forever. And so I just replaced the Latin verb with the Spanish one, kind of did a substitution. And anyway, by the time, and then I had an excellent high school teacher, Miriam Bowman. And by the time I graduated from high school, I could converse. I could hold a conversation. So, and then I took 3 more years at Virginia Tech, and then I just continued to take courses piecemeal until I had so many hours that I had a degree, and then I moved to Spain and lived there for 7.5 years.
You mentioned here in your prologue of your book that you are very, very grateful to this wonderful teacher you had
Yeah.
by the name of Martha Miriam Bowman.
Yeah.
Why was she so wonderful?
Well, she was sort of zany, you know, odd and comical, and she was a true scholar. She had taught Spanish for 40 years by the time she was my teacher. In fact, she retired the year that I graduated, and her classroom routines were perfect, and there was something funny about her. You didn't mess with her. If you asked her a question and she answered it, it might be on the test, so you didn't ask her anything.
Okay.
But then she taught us songs, and when she would teach us the songs, I actually didn't like singing in the classroom. I thought singing was kind of Mickey Mouse. However, when I moved to Mexico City, I discovered that she had taught us all the songs they sing at their parties. So there was an appreciation that came, you know, quite a few years later at what she was doing that I didn't appreciate at the time. Mm-hmm. And but she loved Spain, and she loved all of the Hispanic world. She loved Mexico and South America too. Mm-hmm. But she talked a lot about the Spanish writers Galdós and Pío Baroja, and I was more interested in the contemporary language than I am in medieval Spanish. I wanted to know how to say everything well in contemporary language.
Well, you mentioned that you spent some time in Madrid, mm-hmm. Spain, and,
yeah.
And what did you do there?
Well, I wrote that book. I taught. I went to school myself. I took classes myself. I wrote that book, and I taught English as a second language at several schools, but notably at the Autónoma, and I taught in the IIC of the Autónoma, and then I taught in the volunteer program at St. Louis University's Madrid campus.
Great, so a lot of experience on teaching
mm-hmm.
abroad also. Huh?
Yes,
Yeah.
Starting in Mexico City, I taught at Harmon Hall, Balderas Avenue in 81 and 82. And that was a great school because Harmon Hall was founded by Televisa mm-hmm. to train the interpreters and translators. And the school that I taught at was the original school right down the street from Televisa.
Okay.
And so some of our students were pretty remarkable students. One of my students was the speechwriter for the President of Mexico.
Oh my gosh. Whit,
Yeah.
It looks to me like this is full of expressions and ways in how people communicate in daily life, right?
Uh-huh. Yes.
This is what comes from their mouths.
Right.
Let's say from the horse's mouth.
That's right. Yeah.
Like in everyday living.
Yeah.
So I would like to make a little experiment with you.
Okay.
I'm just going to open this book in the English part,
Yeah.
and then I'm just going to open it
Okay.
potluck, let's say, huh?
Okay.
And then I'm going to throw to you a sentence, okay?
Okay.
And see if you can remember in Spanish, because
Uh-huh.
you have the English sentence here,
Yeah.
and then you have the meaning in Spanish. That
Right.
is really wonderful.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, I have here one. Food for thought.
Oh,
How do you define that in Spanish?
comida para pensar, comida para el pensamiento.
Okay. Yeah, to be something to think about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, o algo para pensarlo.
Sí.
Yeah.
Ajá.
Okay, bastante bien. Okay, let me throw to you another one. Follow the crowd.
Oh, well, for that I'd say dejarse llevar, no? Or
Okay, okay. If you're really close, hacer siempre lo que hacen los demás.
Sí,
Yeah.
sí, también.
Sí. Pero there are
Sí.
so many ways that. But
Sí.
you have it here. You have not only one expression,
Uh-huh.
but you have another or sometimes three
Yes,
ways of saying
true.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's just open the book in a different maybe letter.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we'll say it's the letter G.
Yeah.
Let's see. Give someone a light.
Oh. Dar a alguien luz?
Muy
Da-
bien. Excelente. Dar lumbre a alguien.
Oh,
o-
dar lumbre, because dar a alguien luz means to give birth.
Yeah,
Right.
no, pero ese es a luz. Darle fuego a alguien, ¿no?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you did it right. Okay. Okay. Here's a very common one. Give someone an update.
Oh, yo diría hoy actualizar a alguien.
Exact.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I know that this is a session in English, but he's hitting right on the nail
Uh-huh.
on the things that I'm asking, because I'm
Estoy dando en el clavo.
exacto, muy bien. So he's doing very well. He's passing the test. He better, because he's the author of this book.
But sometimes I'll add one or forget one or do a different one. I mean,
But we're talking about 75,000 phrases, no?
yeah.
And
Well-
you were saying that you have another, you have enough material, enough documents to come up with another book.
Well, there's a reason for it too. My contract with McGraw-Hill specifies that if they ask me for a second edition, I have to do one.
Oh.
And instead of having three, if they asked me to do one and to have 3 or 4 years of hard work in front of me without any pay while I'm doing it would be hard. So I never stopped doing lexicography. And in fact, in the 11 years since I finished the phrase finder, I have accumulated another book that's about the size of that one. So
I've
Yeah.
noticed that the way you do this,
uh-huh.
you talk to people, and then you hear something that interests you.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you immediately take your card.
That's
Give me
it.
one of those cards.
Oh, yeah, I have.
And then,
I keep these in my
And then
pocket
he keeps one of these in his pocket.
all the time. I
Yeah.
never go anywhere without my
Yeah.
cards.
And then he will write it down right here.
Right there.
Yes.
In el acto, in the moment
In
that
the
I
la-
hear it.
the-
Because you'll forget it if you don't.
right.
And
So, this is the way he extracts knowledge. He extracts wisdom from the people, from everyday living.
Well,
let's say, huh?
and I used to, I on the metro train, I would sit next to somebody and listen to their conversation. If it was in Spanish, I would translate it into English as I listened to it. And anything that I didn't know how to translate, I would write down immediately. Or anything that I didn't understand, I would write that down immediately and then go and check it out. One time I was on the metro, and there was an advertisement in one of the metro stations that said, "Te pilla de paso." I thought, what does that mean? Te pilla de paso. Well, it means you can't miss it. You go right by it. It catches you along the way.
Okay.
So, but I didn't know what that meant when I saw it, so I immediately
So it's
wrote it on my
like
card.
catching something from the air, huh?
That's right.
Yeah.
Catch it on a fly.
And right. So you get the expression, you jot it down,
Mhm.
and then later on you you put it into your
Yeah.
your.
And I won't buy a shirt or even a T-shirt that does not have a pocket. And you know, sometimes my students would say, well, now what's the best way to learn quickly or something? And I'll say, well, first of all, you have to keep these cards and a pen with you, and you have to write everything down immediately. And I look around, and most of the guys, their shirts didn't have any pockets.
Yeah.
And I said, well, where do you keep your pen? Or
You
how
need
do
a pocket then, huh?
You've got to, I thought you've got to keep these in your pocket, and you've got to have a pen in your pocket.
I think that's a very wise advice that we can get from Whit about learning a language.
Yeah.
You know what? The English language is so wonderful. It opens so many doors, you know, for everyone.
Yeah.
And I've talked to so many people that they are so grateful, you know, to be able to speak this wonderful language, the English language, because it really does open doors for you.
Yeah.
You know? So when you can speak the language, and when you know quite a bit of the grammar, it makes a big difference. You know, it's very hard to get rid of the accent. You know, like
Yeah.
I have an accent, but I don't care. You know, I mean, I can communicate, and it's just. I think it adds a little different flavor to the language, and,
Yeah.
and in fact I like it, you know.
Well, English. The problem with English for everybody is that the orthography doesn't correspond to the sound. That is, the spelling doesn't correspond to the sound. You can't see the word written and know how to pronounce it. Spanish has a perfect phonetic system. English does not. And that is, I think, the worst thing about English for people trying to learn it. And then too, we have a lot of silent letters, including silent L's like would and could and should, and I would say to my students, you know, la L es solo para confundir a los españoles. You know, the L is just to confuse the Spanish. You don't really. And they would laugh, but it does confuse them, and so I just made that little joke.
Yeah.
You know, that we threw that one in just to throw you off. So, but Spanish has a perfect phonetic system. That's one of the great things about Spanish.
Interesting.
I mean, if you see a word in writing, you know exactly how to pronounce it, and if you hear it, you usually know how to spell it. Sometimes it might be a C or an S, or it might be an LL or a Y, but usually the correspondence is very close.
Great. Whit, I notice here also that you work with a lot of your students, and some of your students contributed to this project. Quite a bit, huh?
Oh, yes.
And then they brought you sentences too.
Oh, yeah.
And then you study them. And then you finally incorporated them into a book, huh?
Well, I would try to get them to write everything down.
Yeah.
And I would say, and bring your cards to class. And
Okay.
the first thing we'll do is go over them.
All right.
And
then you
then
will give them the meaning in English and Spanish, huh?
Yes, and I'm unorthodox in something. You know, the sort of the reigning philosophy of pedagogy is to teach the language in the same way that students learn their native language, with no translation, and immersion is important, and it is essential, but I also translate when I can.
Okay.
Can I give you an example?
Yeah.
You know, one thing that's confusing to Spanish speakers is the word would, because it's both a conditional and an imperfect. And they'll think, well, how do you know which one it is? And I would say, well, you have the same thing in Spanish. And they'd say, well, and I'd say, if you say no sabía a qué hora iba a llegar el avión. Oh, if you say, no sabía a qué hora llegaría el avión, that means I didn't know what time the airplane would arrive.
Right.
Is that conditional or imperfect? And they, on the surface of it, they'd say, well, it's conditional because it's llegaría. And I'll say, but it's really the equivalent of saying, no sabía a qué hora el avión iba a llegar el avión. Right? So it's really, I didn't know what time the airplane was going to arrive. And then a student pointed out to me, but you can also say, no sabía a qué hora llegaba el avión. And then I realized you could also say in English, I didn't know what time the airplane was arriving. Well, so there's an exact correspondence. Llegaría is would arrive, iba a llegar was going to arrive, and llegaba was arriving, right? And so if you show that exact correspondence, it just all at once everything connects. Mm-hmm. Well, I believe in showing that. I don't believe in making people suffer and struggle when you can just show it. You can save hours, and you establish the triangle so quickly.
Well, as you can see, Whit, he is a wonderful teacher, and imagine just being in one of his classes where you are exposed to all of his wisdom, to all of the knowledge that he have acquired throughout his life. So Whit, it's a real pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you.
And being associated with you for so many years.
Yeah.
I've seen you in the classroom. I've seen your humanity. You're a great gentleman. So I want to wish you the very best to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for enlightening us, for all the contribution you have given to the English language.
Well, thank you.
This book, I'm very, very impressed with it. It's a huge book, but this book should be in every library of every student of English or teacher of English, and Spanish also, because it gives you the equivalent in both languages.
Thank you. Yeah.
How can you buy this book?
Just on Amazon.
Amazon. Okay.
I haven't seen it on the shelf in stores for several years. I saw one at Weller Bookworks, maybe 3 years ago, but you mostly have to order it online now.
They used to sell it at
Nobles, at Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble, yeah.
They did. The first, I think, it was on the shelf for the first 3 years after it came out, but I think the online dictionaries they've eclipsed it a little bit. The online dictionaries are very good now and getting better all the time. Mm-hmm. And I never opened this book myself, but that's because I already have it on my computer. So I can see it on the computer. And then too, I've basically got another 1,000-page book already on the computer, and I use that one a lot. And then I have a medical dictionary that I've developed for my medical interpreting, and I have that file. And those two, I use those a lot.
Yeah.
And then when I need to look up something in this one, I just go to my desktop, click on it, and go to it there. So I actually don't look at that book too much, but everybody now has this in their pocket, and that's why the book isn't really. It's still selling a few hundred copies a year, but it's not setting the world on fire, and it's not making me a lot of money.
Okay,
but it's making a little, a few hundred.
I'd love to have be the author of a book like this, though. I think that's a great honor.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to be a public. One time, I was in Barnes and Noble right after it came out, And somebody came in there and said, "Do you have an English-Spanish phrase dictionary?" And right off, the clerk said, "No, we don't." And I said, "Yes, you do." And I went up and got it, and the guy was giving it to his girlfriend as a birthday present, and I autographed it for him.
Oh wow, that was
yeah,
awesome.
that was
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I just like to tell our audience that we're having this conversation right here in our backyard here in our house in Salt Lake City, and we have grapes, and we have
You do?
peaches, and we have a great garden that we are really enjoying this summer, even though it's very hot.
Yeah.
We have been sitting here to close to 100-degree temperature, but it's okay, no? It's been
Well, it
having
feels
nice
cool
conversation.
in here. I'm not even aware
because
of
we
the
have
heat.
all of the shade, you know.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you very much again. And
Oh, you're welcome.
what would you
Thank
say?
you for-
What is the purpose of this book?
Well, the purpose of it is to, when you're trying to assemble a phrase, you can look up, if you look up the components of a phrase, what you come up with will not be the phrase that a Spanish speaker would naturally say. And so I wanted just to know how to say everything. And for instance, how do you say a set phrase? Well, if you tried to translate a set phrase, you'd say una frase fija, right? But it isn't. It's una frase hecha, is a set phrase. So that's the whole idea, is to know how to assemble the phrase and say it the way it sounds natural to a native speaker.
And you know what? One thing I have noticed,
What?
that Google
Mm-hmm.
Google Translate, it's getting very good.
It's getting better.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
because I think they're incorporating a lot of this type of knowledge
Well,
into it.
I see the phrases from this book
Oh, you do?
I see them in
That's
Lingui, and
why,
yes,
that's why.
I see my
Yeah.
book on the website.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
Yep.
So this is a source. It's a good source of knowledge.
It is, and I
because
do
as
see
I
it.
say, I use Google Translate a lot,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm finding that it's coming so close to the real thing.
Yeah.
It's getting better all the time. So good for them,
Well,
and
it's
good for Microsoft Translation too, because it's getting very, very good. You always have to go over it.
They are getting better, but I was reading what my favorite short story is. Well, I have a lot of favorite short stories.
Just
but
very short one.
I think one of the great short stories ever written is James Thurber's The Catbird Seat. And so I Googled the phrase Dodger fan, right? Because he mentions a Dodger fan, that she's but it's talking about the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team. Well, the Google Translate had El ventilador del trampista, because they translated Dodger the way it's translated in Oliver Twist as the artful Dodger. So they translated Dodger as trampista or trickster, right? Instead.
So
You had the trickster's ventilating fan for the Dodger fan, and but everyone should read that story.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Well, I'd just like to finish then saying that we have always been admonished by different sources, and especially when you have a certain religious affiliation. And in my congregation, they have admonished us to search wisdom from the best of the books. And there is a good book that there's a very, very nice scripture that's talking about search wisdom from the very best books, knowledge. Do it by study as also by faith. And this is the book here. It's called Doctrine and Covenants of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Doctrine and Covenants. So congratulations to you, Whit. We will keep going in our search for knowledge, and hopefully this is just our first session. We'll have some
good.
more, okay? Because
Thank you.
we have a lot of things to talk about
Yeah.
languages. Hmm?
Great.
Especially the English language and also the Spanish language. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good to be here.